Welcome one and all to the show. This is the Brothers Mahoney. I am Michael.
And I am James.
And we are here for our first of many discussions on Doctor Who media. Today discussing the Sirens of Time, a Big Finish audio drama.
Big Finish is a company that does audio dramas for Doctor Who and has done these audio dramas since 1997, I believe it is. They actually started with Bernice Summerfield. She's a character who first appeared in the Voyage and New Adventure novels with the Seventh Doctor, I believe. Is that correct, Michael?
I believe so, yeah. And we should also say we have a couple of novels. We are slowly building to our small collection, but and we actually did just get one with Bernice Summerfield in it. But we don't know the character, so for the time being, we just passed over those.
Yes, we're getting Big Finish chronologically by release. We already have a backlog of about, I think it's around 35 at this point. Around, maybe not quite 35, but close to it. 35 Big Finish audio dramas to listen to, and we've only listened to 2 of them so far, although we are currently halfway through Whispers of Terror. But we just thought that Big Finish is so behemoth, it would be best to just keep things orderly and go in chronological order. With the exception of the spin-offs we've kind of put on their own section. Neither my brother or I are familiar with Bernice Summerfield, so even though she has the first spin-off material in 1997, we decided to skip that for now until we know the character a bit more, which I think is fairly reasonable.
Or know her at all, since we don't know
yes. Awesome. The most I know about her is she's a maybe an archaeologist from some future century. I think that's, although maybe it's not archaeologist, that might be River Song, but she's something akin to that. The first one we listened to was The Sirens of Time, the first Big Finish in the monthly adventures that came out July 1999. It stars the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctors, so it's 3 for the price of 1. And we got on sale, so it's even better. And it comes in at just over 2 hours.
Yeah, and before talking about the plot of the story, and we weren't going to get too intensive, just a basic summary type thing.
Yeah, we do it like these are right now. Again, we're buying them in order. They're pretty cheap so far. And seriously, for just like less than $4, you can listen to this yourself. I assume you have the time anyway. And I know a lot of people listen to podcasts while they're on their commute to work or while jogging or doing exercising and stuff like that. So you should hypothetically probably have the time. So we don't want to spoil the plot too much. Plus, if nothing else, you could just go to TARDIS Wiki if you wanted to.
Indeed. But before we get into the plot, I just want to talk a little bit about, I guess, my thought process going into this. So we mentioned in the intro that neither one of us, of course, we didn't grow up listening to the radio. We were born in 1993, so we had what the kids call TV. And so listening to a sort of a radio, all audio media, I thought might be somewhat difficult to get into. There's a couple of reasons. I'm the type of guy, I actually have some mild hearing problems. So pretty much whenever I'm watching TV, it doesn't matter what I'm watching. I pretty much always try to use some type of closed captioning or subtitles. No matter what, I use it all the time. It's just it's what my go-to is. So anytime I, for instance, have a DVD or I'm watching a movie that does have subtitles, I'm always just mildly annoyed. So of course, this being a purely audio creation, that doesn't come with any type of transcript. So there's no subtitles. So there's always a possibility of missing something. And in this, I think it's true in this case too, because there are some characters who either have let's say really high pitched voices, or maybe there's some distortion in the voice, or there's something going on that makes it more difficult to understand what's going on. Now, I just think it's quite as bad as to take away anything from this story. But it had, at least in this one, it did happen a couple of times. But yeah, so our background does not really give us much in the way of experience with this type of media. So I thought it might be a little difficult to get into. But I think, generally speaking, it went somewhat smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time you're listening to something like this, so I think with time it'll get easier to understand like transition cues, to understand what the sound effects actually, meaning. But yeah, for a first story, this honestly, Phantasmagoria might have been an easier first story, but I know they probably wanted to start out with a bang, having our three doctors. So
And it's also worth mentioning, if you're not familiar with Big Finish, I think at some point they might, in some form, they might have some type of narration. But in at least this story, and I know the stories I'm aware of early on, there was no like a narration bridge type thing. It's just purely a dialogue, and of course sound effects.
well,
So
I think the narration's mostly in the companion range. What you call the companion stories.
Companion Chronicles.
That's what it was, Companion Chronicles. I think it's mostly in Companion Chronicles, and there might be some in some of the various spin-offs. I don't think the main range ever did that, but I guess we'll see.
Indeed. So yeah, so it's our first experience with this type of media, so it's interesting to jump into. And with that out of the way, let me just give a quick overview of the plot. So the Sirens of Time, like we said, is the first Big Finish one, and I'm just going to read the I guess the plot summary straight from bigfinish.com. Gallifrey is in a state of crisis, facing destruction at the hands of an overwhelming enemy, and the Doctor is involved in 3 different incarnations, each caught up in a deadly adventure scattered across time and space. The web of time is threatened, and someone wants the Doctor dead. The 3 incarnations of the Doctor must join together to set time back on the right track, but in doing so, will they unleash a still greater threat? And so it follows, it's sort of an interesting story structure. So it's divided into 4 total parts. Part 1 is focuses solely on the 7th Doctor, of course, Sylvester McCoy. Part 2 is the 5th Doctor, Peter Davison, and Part 3 is Colin Briggs. And then Part 4, they all get together and will work together, try to solve the mystery, finish up the story. So it's structured in some interesting way, which I think actually is probably a good thing. It sort of allows us to get used to hearing the individual voices before they all mash together. Because, I mean, obviously Sylvester McCoy has a pretty recognizable voice, but hearing Colin Briggs and Peter Davison and not seeing their faces, just hearing them speaking to each other, admittedly, there are times when I can get a bit mixed up about who's who.
Let's hope that for the most part, Colin Briggs and Peter Davison are not actually in the same area for a lot of the time.
Yeah, there's
true. Mostly, those two are mostly separated.
Yeah, this so they do all get together for a bit, but for a lot of the part 4 they are separated doing different things. Yeah, so like I said, each of the first 3 parts sort of correlate with each of the 3 Doctors. We have McCoy, who's sort of drawn to a sort of a jungly planet.
It's jungly, swampy around there.
Yeah, there's a woman, Elena, who is drowning in quicksand, who he saves, and they try to find a way to, I guess, survive, because there's a bunch of ships crashing into this planet, and there's a house nearby, so they go there for shelter. With the second part, which is, of course, Peter Davison, he is in World War One, lands on, I believe, a British ship, which shortly after he lands, because that's just his luck, it gets hit by a torpedo from a German submarine, and then he and a surviving crew member have to abandon the ship and, of course, leave the TARDIS, as he's unable to get into the TARDIS, and they are actually taken onto the German submarine. So that is some fun times there, and also just seeing his interactions with the German soldiers is fun.
Then, he has this little ploy where he pretends, because of course he speaks German, I would assume mostly because of the TARDIS translator. But I mean, it's possible the Doctor also knows German. I know that is certainly not impossible. He pretends to be a German spy, and like he's almost convincing. It almost works, but continue, Michael.
Yeah, and then part 3 is with, of course, Colin Briggs. There's some type of temporal thing going on. He's sort of thrown out of his TARDIS, and he finds himself in the middle of a giant starship where there is a galactic wonders commission going on. Commission trying to determine whether or not this sort of naturally occurring event, it's like a nebula type thing, would qualify as one of the galactic wonders. So there's a commission going on, then some time things go on, and much of the people, and by much I mean most of the people on the ship, well, something happens to them.
I think they get. Did you know what you spoiled it?
Well, yeah, I just realized I might be saying too much.
Okay.
I'm just trying to set up the stories. So yeah, he lands on a starship with a galactic commission going on, and of course he pretends to be part of the commission. It's all good fun, and of course Colin Begay, who's obviously somewhat of he's a doctor that has some of a mixed reception. I enjoy Colin Begay, but of course he has his classy, arrogant attitude that we've all come to love.
Yeah, and it works really well in audio format because he has a very bombastic, distinctive personality. He really comes out of the speakers. When he speaks, you know he's there.
Yeah.
He does not hide who he is.
He's not a shy lad, as the kids say. But indeed, yeah, and then, like I said, part 4, by they all, I mean the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctors come together and try to figure out the predicament that they find themselves in. So yeah, that's the Sirens of Time. I think it's a really interesting story. Like some of the individual stories may not be necessarily the most engaging. Like McCoy's story, part 1, it probably could have used a little more flair thrown in. But also keep in mind, this is one of the first. Well, it is the first Big Finish Doctor Who audio production, so it might take them a little while to find the footing.
Yeah, find the right balance of what they need to have story and voice, and just all the stuff they need to throw together to make a good story that makes sense and you can easily listen to.
Yeah, and I thought Colin Baker's section was actually really good. I can easily imagine that being like an episode of Classic Who.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we laid it out as plainly, but as Michael said, this story was in 4 parts, and each part was about 25 minutes or so, give or take. So it mostly feels like a Doctor Who episode. You can, obviously without the visual component, but the length of the parts, it comes about to the same as a normal episode of the classic series. So it's nice and serialized, which gives it a nice classic feel, which makes some sense since this came out before the revival series, where it went to the 44-minute format for episodes.
Of course, they did do that for some of Colin Baker's run too.
Well, that's true, but they were still serialized. So I guess technically besides the 5 Doctors, but
indeed, yeah. So that is the Sirens of Time. Decent story. There's a few especially in part 4, once the 3 Doctors come together and they're on Gallifrey, and in fact, yeah, as the description on Big Finish said, Gallifrey is in a state of crisis, so sort of being invaded by a what they say, an overwhelming enemy.
Yeah, so, mysterious overwhelming enemy. Those are always the best.
Indeed. So it's fun. We learn some more story things about what's going on. I wouldn't necessarily call some of what we learn plot twists, but there's some really interesting things that they do.
Oh, I think there's a pretty good plot twist near the end.
Yeah, so I think part 4 is pretty fun. I think also part 2 has a lot going for it. Now, Peter Davison's never been a particular favorite of mine when it comes to Doctors. I just find him pretty tame and tepid. It's not like he does have personality. It's just a personality he has. Just a kind-hearted, decently nice guy. It doesn't really match the like James said, the bombastic attitude of not just bombastic, but arrogant attitude of the 6th Doctor, or depending on which time you're talking about, McCoy's different personalities. But both of them have more feeling, I think, than Davison.
Yeah, to be fair, in this one, McCoy, he was mostly his season 1 stuff. I mean, he wasn't silly, but he just wasn't. He did it in this one, have a companion with him, because they probably could have fit one in, which is reasonable. I'm not complaining. But you don't get any Machiavellian feels from him like his last 2 seasons. He's just kind of honestly, he seems like a pretty normal guy. I actually connected more with Davison's portrayal than McCoy's in this one, to be honest. And I usually like McCoy a lot more than Davison.
Yeah, and
So
I think Davison's story is pretty interesting too, being sort of trapped in in a German submarine. His tower is just floating in the ocean, like miles and miles away now that he has pretty much no access to. I think it's a pretty fun story. Speaking of companions, there technically is two companions with the Fifth Doctor, Tolo and Tegan. Now they are in the TARDIS when they land on the British ship, and so when the Doctor leaves the ship and he's unable to get back into the TARDIS, of course the companions can't come out. We don't hear their voices or anything. We just hear him sort of shouting to them. But technically, they are arguably present, safe in the TARDIS. And of course, both of them. I mean, if you know about the Big Finish, this in the main range, quite a few. So a lot of these companions come back, and in fact, in the very next story, the second Big Finish Doctor Who audio one, it features the Fifth Doctor and Tolo. But yeah, I do think it's worth noting that technically they are present as the story is going on, but they just don't have any actual presence.
yeah, they're not portrayed in the story by either of their respective actors and or actresses.
Yeah, and I guess again on the last part of the story, part 4, there's a decent amount going on, a lot of character, or not so much character, but things going on about the plot that's being revealed. I mean, there's been little smatterings and like, I don't want to say clues because it's not like it's a giant mystery, but it's sort of like a typical timey-wimey type thing going on. And I think they do a pretty good job with part 4 talking about, I mean, not just the mysterious nature of the, as the title says, the Sirens of Time, but there's also an organization called the Knights of Valencia, which I think sound pretty interesting. And there's also a giant time creature. What's it called? The Temporian?
The Temporium, I think.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think it came out pretty nicely. I don't think it's, well, let me first, I highly doubt it would be the most engaging Big Finish Doctor Who story, but as a way to start people off, I think it worked pretty well.
Yeah, again, it's not my favorite story, but one, I'm not used to audio, and two, it is the first, so they get a lot of leeway. One of my complaints, and it's again not a serious complaint. I get that voice acting, you need to set the stage, but there was a character in the first episode, the McCoy pout, who had a really annoying and in some ways almost not understandable accent, and it works for the type of character she was, but with no subtitles. I did it. I listened to it twice. I was able to catch everything she said, and I dislike not being in the know of what's going on in the story when I should be in the know. So that soured me a little bit. And again, I didn't like McCoy in this outing as much as I usually do. So episode 1, which is unfortunate because it's the first one, is the weakest one for me. But the fifth one, and it's possibly the sixth one, really set the stage well. And there is a small underlying mystery, but because it's audio, again, an audio drama, of course, it can only be brought up by a character saying something. So it's not something you can just watch and wonder, hey, what's that? You have to wait until the story wants you to wonder about it. So,
and actually, this one small caveat, I do think part 1's the weakest story, or not story, but it's the weakest part of the story. I do think it had the best cliffhanger.
Yes, it did have the best cliffhanger.
Yeah, I mean, the cliffhanger for part 2 is fine, but I thought the part 1 cliffhanger was, I guess, the most intense. So,
well, I would say that cliffhanger for part 2 was fine. I will say when I first listened to it, I wasn't so how it was a cliffhanger. It was only with re-listening to it that I realized he was stuck outside this tower just in the middle of the ocean. I'm spoilers, but yeah, not a good situation. And I did it again. It's a different medium. I wasn't able to figure out that's how. I honestly thought he just got back in his TARDIS and left, but it makes a lot more sense. It makes a lot more sense with the rest of the story that's the situation we last saw him in. So. Yeah, I'm trying to pay more attention again. It's not like I don't even own a phone, so I'm not distracting myself. I just need to focus harder and get more used to the medium. So,
and that type of thing will come with time. Another thing that's of mild interest to note, you might be wondering, yo, guys, if this came out in 1999, where my hombre Paul McGann, where is my guy Paul McGann? Because Paul McGann was, of course, the doctor at the time, first in 1996, and at the time the serial was been coming out. And was it a rights issue? What was it?
I think it was a rights issue because the 1996 Doctor Who movie was made with, I believe it was
It was a core American production, right?
Yes, I think it was a core American production. And so there was some rights issues for a bit on the Eighth Doctor, and I believe Grace Holloway as well. Now Grace was interesting, but probably not a big loss. I know they eventually got rights to her, but I know they had that one took a while. But the Eighth Doctor, it doesn't take them too long to get the Eighth Doctor into Big Finish. But honestly, I'm kind of fine with it because the movie had come out just, well, this was 98. It came out
3 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And it's just nice that we catch up with the classic Doctors from the original series before we get bogged down with anything for the movie. I just think it's more fair that way. I think I would have preferred this tout over like an Eighth Doctor tout. Always try the hard four of them because that would have been too busy. I think they need to work to get that busy, and they were certainly not ready for something like that yet.
And I also want to give appreciation. It might be about over 20 years overdue, but I'm not sure exactly the origins of Big Finish. I'm not sure when they thought, hey, it might be profitable and a good thing to start this giant collection of audio. Now, there had been Doctor Who audio before. The BBC had some audio with, I believe, the third Doctor, John Porter, in like the early 90s. I think one of them came out like a couple of months before he died. So there had been audio before, but just like maybe 4 or 5 of them. I pulled that number out of nowhere. It wasn't that many. So I do appreciate that Davison, Colin, Briggs, and Sylvester McCoy all, came onto this project, and they were happy to lend their voices and to make it a, at the very least, a decent start to what would turn out to be an extraordinarily, if you think about just how many things are in the Big Finish, not just the main range, but Big Finish overall, it's like, has to at least be over 9,000. Anime joke.
Yeah, well, it's not over 9,000, but it is easily over 1,000. That's without dispute. Yeah, and plus, to their credit, I don't know what they get paid. I'm sure that all the actors love the series. You don't do this for this long and not love the series, but all 3 of them are still doing audio dramas with Big Finish. And from what I've heard, it's done Colin Baker's 6th Doctor a lot of justice. Now, I didn't hate Colin Baker's run. Now, granted, I wasn't alive during it, but having seen it, after the fact, I don't hate it as much as some people do, and I don't hate his Doctor as much as some people do. Oh, really? Yeah, a lot of people say that this run for Colin Baker made him a better Doctor in their eyes, and even for that alone, that's a great thing. So, plus all the extra Doctor Who information we get, all of the world building, all of the stories. I mean, honestly, there's more time. Well, okay, I won't be able to say this with certainty, but I feel counting the spin-offs, there's more time in Big Finish Doctor Who than there actually in like recording length than there actually is in the classic and combined series, because each of these stories, at least in the main range, are ranging from about an hour and a half to 2 hours and a half. And on average, that's longer than at least modern age Doctor Who story. Not a classic one, but it is on par with the normal 4-part series. So that's a lot of Doctor Who that they decided to just give to us in 1999, which is glorious.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of people are already familiar with and invested in the Big Finish audio. I actually just followed the official Big Finish on Twitter, so it's nice to see what they're coming out with, and boy, they're coming out with quite a bit. So it's going to be interesting for us. Like we said, we've only listened to 2 of them in totality. It's going to be interesting to see the stories that they come up with. I know a little bit about some of them. Some of them sound like extraordinarily fascinating. So it should be interesting to listen to them. I think the Sirens of Time, it's not great. I wouldn't rank it. I might rank it above like Dowd and the Bannerman, but I probably wouldn't rank it above most classic Who stories. But it's not a bad time. It's decently fun. And of course, it's always nice to hear these familiar voices coming back to us for the first time. And well, I guess we heard McCoy's voice 3 years previous, but it is nice to see that they came together to make this. And even if it's not amazing, it's an okay start.
Yeah, I might not actually rank that above Doubt on the Bannerman just because I found that one hilarious. If you haven't seen Doubt on the Bannerman, I was going to say don't, but no, but you should. I mean, just because it is the classic series. But it has. I don't know how, but there is some charm to it. It's utterly ridiculous, but there's something there. But yeah, I wouldn't rank it above many classic series either. But again, it's a first outing for Big Finish with the actual Doctor appearing. So like they get this one for free basically. I'm not going to give number rankings for any of the ones we listen to because I'm not very good at keeping a consistent ranking inside in my mind. But I mean, I didn't hate it. So
yeah, and that's a fair point. I think, like we said at the beginning, this is more of a discussion as opposed to a review. So we weren't really going to do star ratings or ratings of any type. So
yeah,
if you're looking to see what it is out of 5, we can help you there, bro. But
yeah, and it works out because again, it's the only ones that just less than $4. Pick it up if you think you'd like to give it a shot. And I mean, again, I didn't hate it. I think there's some fun things with there's a fun play. I don't know how to phrase this without spoiling anything. The thing about this one is that there's I guess we call it a plot twist, but I think things work out really well. It's just one of those things where you listen to it and you're enjoying the story, and then you continue on in the way, and you're sitting there wondering, wait, I thought something seemed strange, and then you just keep listening to it, and eventually you start maybe getting an idea of what's happening, and eventually they come out and tell you what's happening. It's again a background thing. It's not going to hide it from you. It will tell you eventually. So if you don't catch on, it works out.
Yeah, merely with audio, there's only so much they can do to hide it from you.
Well, that's true. And they wanted they wanted But I was just meaning it wasn't subtle. It wasn't novel explained. It's not like it's something leading into a turnpole Big Finish thing in the future. But I'm sure that something like that will eventually happen in one of these. Also, did you want to get to the timeline placement quickly?
Yeah, so one thing we also thought might be interesting is sort of try to place these stories what we listen to. And like I said, we hope to discuss not just Big Finish, but we'll be discussing New Who, Classic Who, the books, once you get more of the books in, comic books, comic strips. I mean, if it's Doctor Who, that will do. That is our new logo.
That is not our new slogan. I veto that.
Yeah. I will work on the lovely paint slogan thing right now. Yeah, so one thing we thought might be interesting though is to try to place these toys, between what they, I guess, would be between. Now, we're not doing this without infinite knowledge of Doctor Who.
Yeah. Let's be very frank about this. There is a one I've mentioned before, the TARDIS wiki. It is the wiki for Doctor Who fandom. So it goes with the classic series, the show, the audiobooks, the books, the audio dramas, the books, anything Doctor Who. It's on this wiki.
And even the things that aren't canon, they would say not valid.
They're saying not valid, but also a very important thing to note for Doctor Who is that they take the stance that there's no such thing as canon except in meta senses, where the Doctor is literally speaking to the audience. I guess accepting a Peter Capaldi, but ignoring that. But contradictions. For example, this is a quick one. There's a 7th Doctor novel in the Voyage to New Adventures, called Human Nature, written by, I believe that was Paul Cornell, where the Doctor, I forget under what circumstances, but he's masquerading as a teacher in England during, I think, right before World War II breaks out. I don't remember the specifics of the novel, but that novel is called Human Nature. Now, there is a 10th Doctor story, of course, the famous Human Nature, the Family of Blood, probably one of the best I'll say, past David Tennant stories, which just adapts that story from the novel into a 10th Doctor story with Martha as the companion. But both are, according to the TARDIS Wiki, because the way that Doctor Who canon has worked all this time, both are canon to each Doctor's personal,
timeline.
To the personal timeline. Both are valid, both happened. The fact that they are basically the same story with different Doctors doesn't change the fact that they're both valid. So basically, it takes things from comics. So the TARDIS Wiki has these pages called...
I guess I should say before we jump into this, we're not aiming to be like canon Nazis. That's not something that we're not going to be like, really big on, oh my God, this breaks canon. I just think it's an interesting way to sort of view the story. Just add some extra context.
Yeah, I'm going to give a quick shout out to something not Doctor Who related. I'm very interested in the idea of chronologizing events in forms of media. It's something I find fascinating. I enjoy comic books. One of my favorite characters is Batman. And there's a site online, the Real Batman Chronology Project, that tries to organize all the appearances of Batman in the comics in chronological order. And it is, as some people might imagine, a complete nightmare, especially with modern day stuff.
There might be some people who aren't into comics. You might think, well, it's easy. It's just when they were published. That is not how it goes.
Yeah, there's at least 2 articles to read before you even probably want to attempt to read the actual timelines the writer of the site has put together. Yeah, so I just find it fascinating. I'm not saying anything's wrong about the way the TARDIS wiki defines canon. It's just a completely different media. It's just different trying to do canon for something that has cross-media things that has lasted for over almost 60 years at this point than it is to do other forms like TV shows. Like a TV show, if it doesn't have spin-offs, is its self-contained timeline. Eventually, once the show ends, you will be able to make your own timeline of events, with flashbacks and whatnot. But with Doctor Who, and I mean, especially including time travel, that is not as easy. But anyway, so they have these pages in the, as Michael alluded to earlier, the timey-wimey detector. They have 30 timelines for all sorts of Doctor Who things, from companions to master incarnations, to specific Time Lords, to Unit, to Torchwood, to the people from Class, which again, I haven't actually seen if you listen to the intro, and neither of us have seen Class. So we thought it would be fun to just have a small section of this discussion to quickly place where these stories take place that we'll be listening to and watching in the larger Doctor Who canon. I thought it'd be fun just because it fascinates me. So the 5th Doctor's part, which was episode 2, where he's on the ship that gets hit by a German submarine. That is taking place between the 5 Doctors and Warriors of the Deep of the classic series. Again, Torlau and Tegan are both in the TARDIS, but they have non-speaking roles. But that's where that's theorized to take place. And again, nothing here is usually concrete. You really, if you're doing a project like this, and again, we're not doing it, we're just relaying information, there's a lot of inferences you have to make. It's a huge project. The 6th Doctor's story, which was part 3 and part 4. Part 4 includes all of them. And then it goes back to wherever they left off. That takes place in between, classic-wise, The Trial of the Time Lord and Time and the Rani. Now, that doesn't mean much, because The Trial of the Time Lord was a 14-episode whole season, and it ended without the Doctor regenerating. And the next one, Time and the Rani, has Sylvester McCoy playing the 6th Doctor before he properly regenerates into the 7th Doctor. So it's more accurately placed between 2 other audio dramas which neither Michael or I have listened to, being the Spectre of Leyen Moore and the Apocalypse Element. I don't know much about, actually I don't know anything about either of them except that they star a new companion who I don't know. But
I guess we can say those are somewhat early and Big Finish's releases, so we do actually have both of them.
Yeah, we own both of them, and we'll get to them.
Yeah.
The Seventh Doctor's power story from episodes 1 and, of course, episode 4 takes place in between Survival and the Doctor Who movie 1996, which is a huge amount of time that the writers can play around with, and they could shove limitless stories into this space because there's really no indications if you just watch the Survival and the movie of how much time has passed. So
aside from theoretically the times the Doctor starts his age in the revival.
Yeah, but his age has never been consistent.
Yeah, so I mean, if you pretty much ignore that, then you can probably fit in as many stories as you want, and it helps, of course, that because it's our timey-wimey, pretty much everything could happen at every time. It's good times.
Yes, but anyway, it's not going to be as convoluted talking about timeline stuff because most stories aren't going to have multiple Doctors. But I just think it's a fun little idea, and again, these observations are from the theory timeline for each of the respective Doctors. Again, they have a nice theorized timeline, personalized timeline for each incarnation. And it's fascinating. You can see what comic books there are. You can see what comic strips from Doctor Who Monthly there are. And there are all types of things that, even like from last year, I didn't know about. I didn't know anything about any talking penguins until I started, looking further into Doctor Who media. And we'll get to talking penguins in the future, I suppose.
And you might be wondering, talking penguins, the fuck are you guys talking about? And it's at this juncture, I should say, that this show is meant for a more mature audience at times. Which,
no, to be fair, that should have been said before that statement.
Yeah. We're just some guys having fun. I mean, yeah, it's not like this, it's going to be a show with a bunch of that low class of language. But, sometimes it might come out. So, especially when you get to either particularly good or maybe particularly bad stories.
So join us for the Jodie Whittaker era.
Indeed. So, anyhow, I guess final words on Sirens of Time. I think it's decent. I don't think it's amazing, but it's an okay way to span 2 hours. And like I said, since it's the first release of Big Finish, some leeway has to be given. Let me rephrase. First release of Doctor Who Big Finish, some leeway has to be given. And I think they did okay. It's not always the most interesting or engaging stuff, but as a story in totality, it's not a bad time.
Yeah, I think the story works. It doesn't do much more than work, but it does work. And I mean, that's good enough.
And I do like I said, there's an organization in the story called the Knights of Valencia. And I may not pronounce it quite right, but I did like the organization. They're sort of fun. And it's my understanding that they also at least referenced in other things, be it audio, be it novels. So that's at least nice.
I also enjoy the Knights of them. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. But I wish we had learned more. But what we got was enticing enough that now I want to know more, which is always which isn't a bad feeling. So that's good. But yeah, I think overall it's an average story. I think for historical precedent alone, it being the first in the main range, again, just being less than $4. I wouldn't be averse to suggesting you pick it up. It might not be the best. I'm sorry to listen to if it's the first audio you're getting into, but chronologically, I'll argue you should try it anyway. But that's just me being OCD.
Yeah, and I'll just finish off by saying this is our first official discussion on any Doctor Who media. It's not particularly fine-tuned yet, but much like it, yeah. So we do have a Twitter page, the Brothers Mahoney. Sorry, I think it's technically at Brothers Mahoney. We have a Twitter page, and you can see my beautiful attempts at trying to make Twitter banners and Twitter profile pictures. I think I mentioned this in the intro. I don't have much experience with, not only video editing, but like graphic design or things like that. I don't do that type of stuff. Well, I guess I do now, but you might look at my results and say, oh, that's not doing it. My point being, we are still working on refining our process, and that will be an ongoing thing. But that said, I hope if you have listened, you have garnered some type of enjoyment from this. And on my end, that is all I have. Anything else from you, James?
I do not really have anything. All I'll say is there was a plucky woman who appeared in a which one was it? Mostly I'm thinking about number 3, episode 3, the Colin Baker story. the Colin Baker portion. I found her interactions with the Doctor to be really enjoyable. The sixth Doctor was in really fine, amusing form.
Yeah, and that character I believe was named Ali. She was a waitress working on the starship with the commission, and she was a fun character. Actually, her character had some like sort of a hidden background type thing, but it was fun, and she was a good character. Yeah, overall not a bad time. But this has been the Brothers Mahoney. I am Michael,
and I am James.
As the kids say, #out.